In the last video we talked about protectors. We talked about them having an extreme role, distorted perceptions, and that they really try to help us. They have a positive intention, but they're often creating pain. Today I want to go a little bit deeper and introduce the other type of parts that IFS knows, the exiles, and I want to do that through a question. And the basic question is, why do the protectors work so hard? Why do they think they need to protect the system so extremely, so hard? And the answer IFS has for that is that there are not just protectors in our system. We don't just have the parts that try to manage our life, that try to avoid pain and create well-being, but we have another type of parts that IFS calls exiles. Now, exiles are parts from the past that are carrying a burden. A burden can be pain, a lot of sadness, negative beliefs. They're basically negative experiences from the past that our system couldn't digest, that our system couldn't handle at the time, that got stuck in us. And there are parts in us, namely the exiles, that are still carrying those burdens from the past. So in a way you could say those parts, those exiles, are still in pain today. They still feel like they did back in the days, like they did in that painful experience back when we were young, because they could never get out of that experience, because they could never process this, they could never digest it. So in the IFS perspective, the protectors are doing their job, they're doing their extreme role to protect the exiles. They're doing that because they know the exiles are in pain, and they try to work so hard so that they don't get hurt again, but they also do the same so that they don't constantly come up into our system. Now, exiles are called exiles because they are exiled from our system. They're exiled from our consciousness. I want to represent that with this little bear, because exiles are usually children, like child parts in us, and they are hurt. The burden they have is being hurt. They're carrying pain, they're carrying negativity, and because that's so strong in them, they are kept outside of awareness by the protectors. So the protectors do what they do to protect the exiles, but also protect the rest of the system from the pain, from the energies the exiles are carrying. And that's why they work so hard. That's why they think they have to do their job so extremely and they can never rest. Going back to the example we had earlier, to the example of the little boy who created the hard-working part that said, "Never again, I will never again experience this." In that situation, that wasn't the only part that took on an extreme role, but there was also another part. In this case, this little bear child. And that part, in the situation, when he got back the test result, that part was feeling inadequate, worthless, not good enough. When the parents yelled at him, that part took on that wound because the little boy couldn't deal with that. The little boy couldn't understand, this is just a test. This doesn't mean anything about me, but he felt worthless. He felt inadequate. And that feeling was so big that this part took that feeling on. This part couldn't deal with it. It couldn't actually digest it. And that feeling is still in the system. That feeling is still there. So if you imagine in the life of that man by now, at work, the boss calls and says, "Hey, I want to see your proposal tonight." That pain, that I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, I'm worthless, can come up. And because of that, then this system will react to try as hard as it can. This part will work diligently hard go into his, okay, I can handle this situation, I will just do everything perfect, going in the head, cutting himself off from that feeling, cutting himself off from this feeling of inadequacy, worthlessness. We're often not even aware of these underlying pains, these underlying exiles we all have in our system, because the protectors work so hard, they work so well to keep them out of consciousness. So in the situation when the boss calls and the feeling of inadequacy arises, this part will become extremely active. It will become extremely important for that part to work even harder, to do everything so that feeling of inadequacy doesn't come up, and that the fear of even feeling like that will be kept at bay. So the protectors do their job because underneath there are the parts that are hurt. There are the parts that actually feel worthless, that are convinced that they're worthless. That's all these parts experience, and they do their job, they do their extreme role so well so that we never have to feel that. Never again. As a summary for this video, because this is so important to get about the IFS model, is that for every protector, for every part that is active in our life, that is creating problems in our life, there is an exile that protector is trying to protect and trying to protect us from. So for every protector there is an underlying pain that protector with whatever behavior it's doing is trying to shield from hurt, but also that it's trying to protect the rest of the system from being overwhelmed by that pain, by that hurt, by that constant anger. So the protectors do their extreme roles, they do their extreme behaviors to avoid that. And what's so important to understand is that these exiles are stuck in the past. They're stuck in the experiences we've had in the past, and they couldn't digest them, so they're constantly feeling like that. They are constantly feeling worthless or sad or destroyed. Whatever the experience was that the system, that the part, the exile couldn't digest. And one of the things to maybe add to this is that not just these are often stuck in the past, but usually the protectors are stuck in the past as well, because they don't realize we've grown up. They don't realize we're not just that part anymore. So they do their job because that's the only opportunity or the only way they have to protect us. And they take it so serious because that pain is real. The pain the exile carries is real, and I think anybody who's ever experienced an old wound, an old hurt breaking open knows how real that pain is. When an exile comes up, again, it's not like, oh, there is an old pain, but we feel that shame, we feel that worthlessness, we feel that old sadness, and especially if it's a big pain, if it's something that we really couldn't digest in the past, that can feel completely overwhelming. So that is why these parts work so hard to avoid that from happening all of the time and to keep this out of our daily experience. So that's the rough overview over the parts in IFS, and in the next video I want to dive into one of the things that makes IFS incredibly unique. You never know what's around the next corner.